Hey there, this is Dr. Craig Brown. I thought I would take advantage of this digital age and use video to help really show and explain and kind of detail what I've done as a technology consultant slash resource over the last 28 plus years. I thought I would just kind of go through my resume, highlight some specific things, point out some accomplishments, things that don't really jump off from the page. So for anyone who's looking at this and who's interested in my background and looking for a highly qualified technology resource, I absolutely would be interested in talking with you, particularly in the areas in which I'm going to go through here within my background from a technology standpoint. I thought I'd start out with my educational background and my certifications, just to kind of highlight the beginning of my career and maybe even talk about what I've learned, but most importantly, from a qualification standpoint, tell you what I've earned in terms of college degrees and certifications. I have a master's in business from Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, along with a doctorate in computer information systems and computer and management information systems, also from University of Pennsylvania. And then I earned a doctorate in computer engineering from Cornell University, and that spanned a time frame between 1991 and 1990, and actually 2010. I do have a bachelor's. Sorry, I forgot to mention a bachelor's in computer science, and mechanical engineering. I have earned more than 25 technology certifications over the years. Quite a few of my certifications are on database platforms. I'm Oracle Master Certified in version 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I'm Microsoft certified professional and a system engineer under SQL Server 2005 and 2008. And I have quite a few certifications in operating systems like Sun Solaris and such that was around at one point back in the past. I do have the MySQL certifications, and that includes the DBA administration certification, as well as the core internals and the clustering certification. I did recently earn the big data of several big data certifications from the Big Data Science School. Don't know if anybody's really looking for those at this time. It's probably pretty early, but I thought I'd jump in on them while they were being offered. And I did get the Big Data Architect certification, as well as the Big Data Science certification and the Big Data Consultant certification among the six. I got six altogether, but those are the three I thought I'd highlight. I do have a DB2 certification administration. So like I said, most of my certifications are database platform specific. What you don't see listed here on the screen is my project management certifications. I have a PMP from PMI in project management. I originally earned it in 2009, but then I went back and recertified in 2011, 2014, and 2016. And I did recently in 2015 earn the program management professional certification, the PGMP. And then I went back in 2015 and I earned the Agile Certified Practitioner certification. I felt like as an expert on the database, within technology, that it was important to acquire these project management certifications, if anything, if not to manage projects from a corporation or enterprise perspective, to manage the project from my perspective, to help me keep in line and keep track of what's expected of me, to help me understand and align with goals and business requirements, and to be able to sit in meetings with senior executives and talk about the projects that I'm working on, even if they're highly technical, from a business perspective, and bring to the table the necessary information to help not only keep the project moving forward and on time and on schedule, but also keeping the business actively involved in what it is that I'm working on, and make sure that we're all on the same page at all times. Whether I'm brought in as a consultant on time and materials, or whether I'm brought in as a resource on a fixed cost, fixed price project with a specific start date and end date. Or if I'm lucky and you're interested in my background permanently, you bring me on as a permanent employee, Again, these are all skills that I would use for the purposes of just keeping track and making sure that that not only I'm using what I know, but I'm also the kind of person that can pick up things and learn along the way, which I hope that my educational background shows you. So let's move into some more specifics about my technology background. So this slide really just represents the crust of what I do from a technology standpoint. I support platforms, I support applications, and being a consultant myself or a resource, I work with other resources, other staffers to move projects along and help the organizations that bring me in get the best ROI on whatever it is that I cost them from a resource perspective. I thought I'd highlight, from a platform perspective, what I do, what I bring to the table. I support quite a few platforms. I support SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, Microsoft Dynamics, Lawson Financials, from an ERP perspective, and all the things that come with administration support, from patching, from maintenance, basically anything that's necessary to keep the platform stable and available for the users to access and take advantage of the capabilities that they provide. In addition to ERP platforms, I support RDBMS platforms like Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, PostgreSQL, and Sybase, just to name a few. And again, the things necessary from a platform perspective to keep the databases stable, the data available, and the users obviously able to connect to them and utilize them freely. I'll get into what that support entails a little bit later, but I just thought I'd mention some of the high points. I want to mention big data. I'm not going to get too much into it now, but from a platform perspective, I do support big data platforms, NoSQL platforms. So just from the perspective of just administration, monitoring, and support, I am a fully, highly qualified technology, hands-on, in the trenches resource that can get in and identify, solve, and take care of the technology itself, and do the things necessary to keep the technology working. Same with job monitoring, enhancement, ongoing application support. I'm not a developer, but from a development perspective or application platform perspective, anything that's involved with building the application platforms, I can support all the back-end sides of that. Make sure that developers or the application teams have all the necessary database or data resources that they need. And then again, from a staffing perspective, I am a data engineer. I can serve in the capacity of data engineer, data scientist. And I do have a development expertise. Again, I don't do development anymore as far as building code, but I use my development expertise now to make sure that what code is being developed can be optimized for the platform in which is set to run on, so that I have a keen insight on heading off problems that may be code related, especially with performance, and taking advantage of the technologies and letting the technology do what it does naturally in the code, rather than rely solely on the code and do a lot of work. So that's just our perspective on that. Let's move on to the next slide. I wanted to get into the database specifically, and I'm going to reserve this slide for just RDBMSs. I know that we have to distinguish between SQL and NoSQL these days. So I thought I'd save that NoSQL conversation for later when it comes down to specifically talking about big data platforms. So let's just specifically talk today in this slide about RDBMS support. So I mentioned in a previous slide that from a platform perspective, that I'm very highly qualified in Oracle database platforms, Microsoft SQL Server platforms, IBM DB2 platforms, Sybase platforms, Sybase AES. Those are the primary majors. And then some newer platform that's on the market now that I've become very highly qualified on is PostgreSQL. I do other platforms like database platforms like Informix and Ingress and AS400 and things like that, but I won't get into that now. It's in my resume. It's a little further down, it's a little older, but for those that are interested in that part of my background, feel free to certainly delve into that when you download my actual PDF at the end of this video. So as far as database administration is concerned, that's everything that entails supporting the database instances, the necessary resource and configuration that comes with configuring and staging the database to receive and provide data to those users that are accessing it and to those applications that are directly interacting with the database. I will get into the performance tuning in a minute, but just anything related to stabilizing and keeping the databases available for access and data retrieval. Performance tuning, a lot of work there. There's over 20 years of performance tuning specific tasks in my background. Again, on those database platforms I just mentioned, query optimization, database parameter, database configuration optimization, operating system and kernel parameter tuning, pretty much anything that has to do with connecting to the database, whether it's network latency, database latency as pertaining to database connections, managing those concurrent user limitations and thresholds, and making sure that database can basically accommodate its requirements in terms of the business community. And then just overall server and hardware performance tuning, just making sure that the server and the operating system that the database is running on top of is optimized as best as possible. Problem solving, really anything that needs to be done, it has to be done in order to rid the database of any issues that are hindering its ability to service the business community that's accessing it, the applications that need data retrieval processing available. So I won't get into too much in that, but just I'm not limiting that problem solving to just whatever it takes to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Total database experience, more than 28 plus years. Well, everything's really 28 plus years, but from a database perspective, Oracle's around 20 years, Microsoft SQL Server is around 15 to 16 years, Sybase and DB2 are more like 10 years. And MySQL is right at that 9-year mark, and I'm current, up to date on all of the current versions, and I can go back pretty much most of that time. If you have older versions that you're trying to upgrade to newer versions, I certainly have that skill set. PostgreSQL and the newer database technologies that are out there that are SQL based are right around 5-6 years. Lots of good experiences. I mean, from full installations from scratch to full implementations, incorporating application needs and things like that. I'll get a little bit deeper into some more database platform specifics when I get to some of the areas in my resume, but I thought I'd just kind of leave it there for now, and hopefully that was enough to give you the details in that space. Still talking about databases, database platforms. Again, the Oracle SQL, DB2, MySQL, Sybase, and PostgreSQL. But more specifically in those database platforms, clustering, storage with mirroring, with RAID 5, SQL data, building data sets, getting more into the storage with LUNs and things like that. Table management, schema design, database information, whether it's warehouse, archival strategies. Again, just getting deeper into that platform, really talking about what I can do for you in reference to true support, all the way down to the nitty-gritty into the database objects themselves, regardless of the layout of the environment, whether it's clustered, whether it's standalone. And then I also wanted to get into, from a database platform, the high availability aspect of it, being able to support log shipping and other high availability options like warm standby databases, getting into active and active passive configurations. Again, all within my skill set. I'd say, again, it's total between 15 and 20 years, depending on which database platform we're talking about. And what it really comes down to is that I can jump right into any environment and from day one and really get active, get involved without any ramp up time necessary. Moving into just services altogether that involves these database platforms. I kind of wanted to broaden it out a little bit here. In addition to the actual core hands-on database engineering, database support, database administration. Kind of take a step back to database health checkups, disaster recovery planning, looking at activity at the database level per an application, per user, community services, and looking at reporting. Kind of take a step back and also being able to help out in the areas is kind of surround the database platform from an application perspective, and also looking at like things like disaster and such, to be able to sit down and plan out the what ifs. If we lose a server, if we lose a node, if we lose a data center. I do want to mention, I did mention earlier when I talked about platforms that I have an ERP platform background. I also wanted to mention that here in supporting the ERP itself, getting into not only the database side of it, but the application server, the web server. So I kind of lump all those things under database services, primarily since database services are required in order to have these other areas, particularly in database event alert, job management, job support, anything that's code related that runs in the database. I can certainly support and have a lot of senior level subject matter expertise around. Now we're going to get into that big data, and I'm really proud of my big data background. I had some challenges initially in around the 2008-2009 period when I really started to ground floor my background in big data. So I've been in big data since then. I remember my first Hadoop installation was early version of one, and very challenging because it was really immature compared to today's Hadoop capabilities. But I jumped into the big data more because I was interested in it, not because anybody was really requesting it back in 2008, 2009. But what I had a hard time wrapping my hands around initially was how the data model, kind of existed. How do we transfer, an enterprise data model, running on Oracle into something like a big data platform. And I couldn't quite make that connection. Probably because I wasn't really driven by any real requirements. I was really being driven by my own self-interest and kind of demoing in it. But I did a few POCs and kind of learned it, School of Hard Knocks, kind of learned it the hard way. Made a lot of mistakes, learned from those mistakes, and then was able to build my experiences up from that way. So kind of really proud of where I am now, very senior level on big data platforms, and my overall big data experience. Does involve quite a bit of moving parts within an ecosystem. So this slide talks about, providing support and help with solutions and implementations of those solutions from a big data perspective, installations and integrating Hadoop clusters on new machines from scratch, configuring Hadoop, setting up for optimal performance from scratch. Even if we know very little about what the big data platform is required from the business, I'm able to look at least what our goals are, come up with a really good conceptual design. May have a little buffer in terms of resources and a little more than what we might need initially, but certainly able to accommodate what is coming and down the road will futuristically will be coming into a big data platform. Really want to mention the Hadoop and the map producing side of it. That's where I started. Got a lot of experience there. I'd say overall big data platform, we're talking about 9 years from a Hadoop perspective. When we get into some of the little smaller Hadoop components like Kafka and Scoop and all these various capabilities that can complement a Hadoop ecosystem. I'll get into a little later, but that's more like 3 to 5 years, depending on which we're talking about. I never considered myself to be an analytical resource. I always felt like that was a business analyst job years ago, but I'm extremely heavily into the analytical side of things. So not only am I that technical resource that can come in and build your clusters and your Hadoop ecosystems from the installation software services side, I can certainly help on the data side as well, and implementing those Hadoop components that focus on the analytics. So I'll mention it here, but I'm going to go into a little deeper. That's where my data science background comes into play. 10+ years focusing on transforming my experiences, like I just mentioned, from that structured standard database platform into a big data platform. And what I'm really proud of, and this picture kind of displays it, is all the different pieces of what can make up a big data platform, depending on your particular big data platform needs. I mean, I'm end to end, but I just want to highlight things like weblogs and document data and enterprise data coming out of multiple data sources that may be structured and unstructured accordingly. Looking at sensor data, Internet of Things, social data. You got all these different forms of data that come in now, and now organizations want to report against it, and they want to look at the structured and the unstructured kind of together, the transaction data and the business data, in a single report, limiting what typical standard data warehouses were capable of doing prior to the big data revolution. So I thought I'd just throw here, frame my resume, quite a bit of background in terms of what these components consist of, with Kafka and Lambda architecture and DynamoDB and even the new Microsoft component that was just released. I want to say within a week or two ago, today being the 27th of April, and which is called DocumentDB on Azure. So large, vast background. I can come into any big data environment and help out purely on the technology side, but then also I can come in, and again, as I just mentioned, help out on anything that's more data warehousing related, data analytics related, getting the questions answered from in the data, looking at metadata and metadata management. Wanted to point out here, because it's not really spelled out, doesn't really jump out at you, but I can liaison between the IT team, which is where I'm accustomed to sitting and producing, with the business teams and bringing that technology into the business, sitting with the business users and being technology savvy enough to understand what needs to be done technology wise, but sitting with the business and making sure that they understand what they can do, especially if we start throwing things on top of the technology stack like data visualization and such. So thought I'd highlight that here, and I'll move on to the next slide. This is just a picture that talks about my cloud and virtualization platforms. I'm not going to really get into it here. It is spelled out in my resume. Just wanted to kind of show you the vastness of it, the programming side like Scala and PHP, the NoSQL side like Mongo and Cassandra, the PostgreSQL, which is SQL's based, but more big data capable. But then you got SQL Server, MySQL. So I mentioned quite a few of these platforms in my presentation so far, but I thought I'd just kind of throw these logos out at you and see the diversity in my background. This isn't everything that I know, but this is quite a bit. And more so I chose these because this is what I'm saying more and more often right now in the current requirements that are coming along the pipe that are coming into my inbox. Let's talk cloud. Cloud is a very important, I believe, part of my background. I'm very proud that I was able to extend my capabilities beyond just the databases and the technology in which I'm accustomed, in which I've come from. I like the cloud. Now, the cloud is still infrastructure. The cloud still resembles server technology that I'm accustomed to. And so it wasn't a hard stretch to jump into the cloud. But I wanted to make mention that I've gone beyond just the infrastructure. I mean, I can certainly build your cloud requirements from an infrastructure standpoint in terms of storage, memory, server, VMs, things like that, to get you prepared and ready to distribute your systems in a cloud fashion. However, I want to mention here the migration and testing skill set that I've acquired over the years. Done quite a bit of data migration over the years from platform perspective, doing platform changes like Oracle to SQL Server to DB2, DB2 to Oracle. Took those skills and kind of brought them into the cloud, and now I'm able to do cloud migrations to the cloud from premise and also from one cloud service provider to the other. I won't get into all the different cloud platforms, but that does include AWS, Azure, Rackspace is the more common cloud service providers that I've been involved in. And then I also have some Google Cloud as well. But that includes auditing, automation, optimization. Again, very similar to what I would do within an on-premise platform. But I thought I would specifically mention the cloud because it is very important. It is kind of, the requirements are growing out there in terms of this being a need and getting in more and more demand. Now I want to talk about that NoSQL. I mentioned the big data. I mentioned the database platforms from an RDBMS perspective. So now I want to just kind of throw in there the SQL and NoSQL database experience. Very similar to the RDBMS platform services that I would provide in terms of maintenance and support and such. Very similar here, but with NoSQL database, there's a little bit more. It's a little bit more on the data side. That data modeling, as I mentioned earlier, is extremely important in understanding the right way to design these databases to achieve the data pipeline, data ingestion, data integration requirements that may be required from these databases. So configuration management and patching is extremely important. Performance tuning. Don't assume that NoSQL databases don't have the same types of performance problems that structured databases have, because they do. Queries can be slowed down due to database configuration issues. And so whether you're on a cluster or you're in a standalone, there's lots of things that need to be tuned and tweaked and maintained. And so I thought I'd take a few minutes to just throw and specifically mention that. We have the high availability, we have disaster recovery, we have backups, we have audits, very similar to various things I would also do in an RDBMS platform. So I thought I'd just kind of merge them here and show you that I have all of the same skill sets required, whether you have NoSQL, whether you have a SQL platform. I can help out, and I'm senior level there. Total NoSQL, again, around 5-6 years, depending on which one we're talking about. Just to name a few, I'm senior level in MongoDB, quite a bit of good experience in senior level in Cassandra database, tons of experience. And actually, that's actually more than 6 years on HBase and Hadoop. That's actually closer to 8 years. But again, I don't even count those earlier versions because they weren't quite as capable as they are now. Don't know if I want to mention, the PostgreSQL now because that's more SQL, but I do have that as it relates to and things like CouchDB and so forth. So if I didn't mention it, doesn't mean I don't have experience with it. I'm just trying to keep this video down to a smaller 15-minute window. So let me move on to the next experiences. Quite a bit of options in terms of delivering my capabilities into your organization. I can come into your organization and sit with your technical teams in person. As a resident DBA, I can come to your organization via a remote connection and perform the same duties. Regardless of the way you want me to support you in terms of delivering my capabilities into your organization, I'm flexible. We can even combine it to a on and off period where I'm on so many days, off so many days. Really, what determines just these types of decisions for me truly is just cost. What is it costing in travel expenses to physically come to your office if it's not in the Houston, Texas area, which is where I reside. If I need to get on a plane and come out there, I will. But those cost savings can certainly can add to my tenure within your organization, unless we're, of course, talking perm, but from a consulting standpoint. So if your budget, from an hourly rate or fixed cost standpoint, can be stretched out over a longer period of time if we remove those expenses, I think the remote DBA option should be incorporated in there. But again, I certainly let you decide from that perspective. I just wanted this slide to show you the kinds of things that I would do and the key responsibilities that I would incorporate in addition to what I've already mentioned via whether it be remote or as a resident DBA on your team. And then that does include managed services. If I was joining an organization that was in a managed service contract and I was supporting that managed service organization. Kind of want to take a step back from that big data and get away from specifically mentioning my background on the technology side, and then really look at the full ecosystem and what I can do from not only from the structured and unstructured data, but real-time processing with components like Kafka, ETL. I'm going to get a little bit more into the details in a second, but I thought I'd show this picture to kind of give you my overall broad expertise. And in every one of these components, I can jump right in. So whether it's on the data and the data analytics side, whether it's in the databases themselves, whether we're talking data stores and data warehouses, learning engines, rules engines, and then, way on the right here, those dashboards, reports, analytics, and data mining. I can jump right in and support you full speed ahead, and I'm senior level in every one of these areas. And that's one of the good things, and what I'm mostly proud about from my big data experience standpoint is that I've grown from, just that senior level DBA, which is where I spent a lot of years doing Oracle and SQL and DB2, into this full, well-rounded resource, which now when I go back into those RDBMS platforms, I'm a full-fledged architect, I'm a full-fledged engineer, and I'm a full-fledged administrator, and I can service you in any one of those areas specifically, or service you in all of those areas where needed. So I can jump around and help out a team, and wear several hats, and maybe even save you money on additional resources because I have the capacity to do quite a bit from a multitasking standpoint. So I hope this picture really speaks well to that. Wanted to mention, because it's still a viable need out there now in terms of data warehousing and business intelligence. I did mention earlier that my background and fast growth from a data analytics standpoint, but really getting into the business intelligence and the tools associated with data mining and data integration and even platform integration, getting it into the organization and plugging into all those different areas in the business that are necessary. But data warehousing still is very important, whether it is a structured database, a data warehouse built on top of a structured database, or whether it's a data warehouse built into a big data ecosystem. I can do full optimization and performance of that data warehouse, re-architecting of it, because it's a necessary thing sometimes. And depending on whether we're talking big data warehousing or not, really getting into that enterprise data model, because I have a very vast 15-year data modeling background, data architecture background, that consists of data normalization, whether we're talking details, dimension data, dimensional modeling, and so forth and so on. Looking at the ETL workloads and looking at the ETL necessary for true data ingestion strategy building, looking at data ETL and data ingestion from a performance standpoint, scripting aspect, and the overall technology necessary to moving the data around the organization, landing it where it needs to land, and then supporting the data once it gets to the places it needs to go, going back to the platform support that I mentioned earlier. Thought I'd draw a picture here and just talk about a picture, take a step back and just look at the overall background I have in data lakes. Talked a lot about the databases and the data ingestion and data information, but just kind of want to take a step back and show you a picture of all the different types of data that can be, kind of dumped into this pool of database technologies, and then how they all can work together in solving, business requirements, business use cases that are related to IoT, business applications, web server and web server logs, if it's web application, mobile applications, and social data. And all these different types of data and data types don't always mix naturally, but I have the capability to go into and build the right data lake with the right data sets under the necessary requirements that you have from a data perspective. So I thought I'd just take a step back, and I wanted to mention, that analytical side too here again, and then getting into the analytics once the data is in that data lake, getting into the analytics of using that data properly in the business. So overall, here's the picture. Kind of throws all my skill sets into one place, so you can kind of see it all. System administration, cluster maintenance, big data as a service, all the things that kind of plug into that big data ecosystem, Hadoop, and everything necessary to bring a Hadoop ecosystem to life, and supporting it and making sure that it's working side by side with all of the other components, and that are not talking specifically to Hadoop from a processing standpoint, but are connected to the data that may be coming out of Hadoop. So Hadoop as a service, ODBC, JDBC, true technical and traditional ways of getting into and out of databases. Obviously monitoring, know what's going on, being able to get ahead of and preempt problems before they attack and before users notice any issues or problems. So I just wanted to kind of talk about the ecosystem experience here from a support, quarterly health checks, data integration, vendor management, issue tracking, resolution, help desk, you name it. I've touched it and have good level of experience in supporting it, maintaining it, keeping it up and running, and making sure that you have everything you need moving forward. Talked about the database RDBMS platforms from a platform perspective. Let me just talk about the Hadoop administration itself. Really getting into Yarn, looking at the resources, data integration, once again, vendor management, but from the Hadoop perspective specifically. Looking at HDFS, looking at the right way to cluster configuration modifications and chain in real time, capacity planning, power management, memory management, basically anything related to a 24/7 requirement from production, and then looking at test and dev environments, making sure that they're up to par so that when things move into production, that's an apples to apples migration, map reduce, anything basically you need that's necessary to maintain and keep Hadoop not only running, but scaling it according to its needs from a data perspective and what the business is incorporating. So that's it. I wanted to take the time to thank you for listening and watching this video. Again, this is just a high-level overview of what I can do from a technology background. Didn't get into everything, but I just wanted to high point the things that I thought were the most important. I have a very detailed resume that will accompany this video that you can download. And feel free to call me at 281-687-9219, which is my mobile. Drop me an email at consultant@craigbrownphd.com. If you have any job requirements that you want me to take a look at and match up to my skill set and confirm that I'm a good match. If you want to share any questions technology-wise, I'm very open and I share. I'm very active in the social community as well. I have a Twitter account at Craig Brown PhD. I'm on LinkedIn. You can search my LinkedIn profile. Again, that information is in my resume. But that's if you search LinkedIn for Craig Brown PhD, that's me. If you want to talk to me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Dr. Craig Brown. And those are primarily the three ways to reach out to me on social media. Again, email, you got my phone number. There's no reason you should suffer from a technology research perspective. Feel free to give me a call. And because of my activity in these social networks and a number of meetups that I'm on and just my overall access to real good technology people, I'm partnered with and associated with quite a few groups out there. So feel free to drop me an email and just email when it comes to this type of thing. When you want me to make some connections for you, feel free to use my LinkedIn inbox, message me a request of such a nature, or again, use that consultant@craigbrownphd.com email address to let me know what you need. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.